Tonight, a Toronto couple is facing hundreds of sex abuse charges spanning 17 years.
This is the most prolific and disturbing case of child sexual abuse in our service's history.
Police say there are at least 41 victims, the accused filming many of the assaults and uploading them to the internet. Plus,
the Ford had 3 slashed tires.
Toronto police also investigating a potential hate crime after this man's tires were slashed and his Ukrainian flag ripped from the side of his car. And
it's massively organized, it's highly structured.
A new text message scam is making the rounds, claiming to offer license plate sticker refunds weeks before the province is set to send them out. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. A Toronto man and woman are facing hundreds of charges tonight in a case of child sexual abuse that Toronto police say spanned almost 2 decades and involved dozens of victims. Ardelia Ashry has the details.
Toronto police are calling it the most disturbing case of child sexual abuse they've ever seen. The man and woman accused are facing hundreds of charges, mainly against children, though some of the victims are men and women. The physical and sexual assaults happened over the span of the last 17 years. Many of it was recorded and then later uploaded onto the internet.
We have arrested 37-year-old Martin Mark Wetlaufer of Toronto and 42-year-old Kathleen Wardlaw of Toronto. I will say that this is the most prolific and disturbing case of child sexual abuse and exploitation in our service's history. We believe that 80% of our victims in this case are children.
Here's what we know so far. The investigation began in January 2020. The couple is facing more than 400 charges that involve at least 41 victims. These offenses took place in the Danforth area, specifically Danforth Avenue and Doss Road, and Danforth Road and Eglinton Avenue East. Wetlaufer and Wardlaw are said to be intimate partners. Police are not disclosing the relationships between them and the victims in order to protect their identities. Also, because of the sensitive nature of the case, they say they are not disclosing how many videos were discovered.
We have possibly more victims that are out there. And, the duration of 17 years, we want to ensure and reassure these victims that we're here to help them. We've arrested the 2 individuals that we have alleged that are behind this. And we also, as I mentioned, have unidentified victims that we would like to come forward.
I spoke to someone from Boost, a child advocacy center here in Toronto. They say on their website they have resources available for parents who want to approach this topic with their children and don't quite know how. Now, Toronto police are also asking anyone who believes they're a victim or has any information linked to this case to contact police. Wetlaufer and Wardlaw will appear in court on Friday at 9 a.m. at Old City Hall. Dalia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
A 22-year-old man is dead after a shooting in Scarborough tonight. It happened in the area of Kingston Road and Morningside Avenue at around 5:15. When officers arrived on scene, they found a man suffering from several gunshot wounds. He was rushed to hospital but did not survive. 2 people are in custody and a firearm was recovered. Police say the shooting happened near a busy intersection and in broad daylight and are appealing for any witnesses to come forward. To Ukraine now. It's been a day of diplomacy as world leaders scramble in a bid to end the Russian invasion. Now, meanwhile, in Kiev, the curfew has ended. The capital still in Ukraine's hands as scattered fighting continues. Salima Shivji has the latest.
A tense calm settled over Kyiv as day broke. A brief break in fighting and a weekend curfew lifted meant long lines outside grocery stores. The desperation ever present. My child is 3 years old and she's far away, this mother says. We can't pick her up because we're under fire. Even after getting in, many shelves were empty, with supplies limited. Some Ukrainians who tried to leave the capital ended up coming back, determined to fight.
No, I'm not really afraid. I believe the world is on our side and, we were attacked. It's not our aggression.
The aggression on display in the outskirts of the capital and in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second biggest city. a barrage of rockets seemingly targeting residential buildings. Ukraine's defiant president was clear about what he wants: a stronger bond with Europe, full membership in the European Union. I'm sure it's fair. I'm sure we deserve it, Volodymyr Zelensky said, as he also directed a message to the Russian fighters advancing on his cities. Drop your weapons and leave, he said. Don't believe your commanders. Don't believe your propaganda. All this as talks between the Russians and the Ukrainians got underway on the Belarus border. Both sides left without an agreement to end the conflict, but with a promise to meet again. And again today, more international pressure on Russia, further sanctions against the country's central bank. And Switzerland, too, putting aside its traditional neutrality.
Inacceptable sur le plan politique, inacceptable d'un point de vue moral.
Sided with Europe and adopted the same sanctions, freezing billions of dollars in Russian assets. With the ruble in freefall, the pressure on the Russian economy grows with every passing day. Salima Shivji, CBC News, London.
Here in the GTA, police are investigating recent incidents where members of the Ukrainian community appear to have been targeted, from car tires being slashed to a violent case of road rage caught on camera. Ali Chiasson takes a look.
The flag was hanging on this side here.
Wasyl Moskal had just gotten back from the mega march for Ukraine downtown and figured he'd gas up the car before the work week started. But when he got to the gas station, someone pointed out what had happened while he was gone.
Shoved in the tailpipe here.
But that's not all.
The first emotion is anger, but I just kind of almost dismissed it as just kids being stupid. But unfortunately, the next morning I woke up to find that the Honda had 2 slashed tires and the Ford had 3 slashed tires. So at which point the police got involved.
The Toronto police are treating it as a suspected hate crime. And it's not an isolated incident either. On Sunday in Vaughan. We don't see what's led up to this road rage here, but the victim alleges the driver in the red vehicle ripped down the Ukrainian flag he had on the hood. He then took the Russian flag off of the other car, and that driver does this. York Regional Police charged the man with mischief, while Toronto police look for who's responsible for vandalizing Wasyl Moskal's property.
That's put up security cameras. My neighbors have security cameras. They have rearranged them to point it a little bit more in my direction. So they are looking out after us, and I appreciate the help from the community.
He says he won't be intimidated.
I was born there. I came here as a 10-year-old. And like I said, we chose to live here because we immigrated here because of the great country this is. And we have to support the people here and there and stand together. Do not take your flags down. This is the least we can do. There's people dying there. So me keeping my flag up, costing me a couple of $1,000s with the tires, it's nothing compared to what's going on there.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, last day of February, inching closer to spring, but at the moment still pretty cold.
Yeah, it certainly was today. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. But we're dealing with temperatures that can't really make up their mind because we're going in the opposite direction through the overnight hours. Temperatures rising as we have a warm front coming in, and it will be a milder day for tomorrow. Then we get to Wednesday, and it's kind of a split decision, so we'll be closer to seasonal. And then by the time Thursday comes in, and especially Thursday late in the day towards Friday morning, we'll have cold air back. But guess what? By Friday afternoon, they start to go up as another system is going to come through. So real fluctuations that we'll be seeing with those temperatures as we head through the week. Now, along that warm front, a little bit of light snow and flurry activity, very light in nature. We'll show you the accumulations a little bit later on in the show, but generally it's less than a couple of centimeters here. And moving into eastern Ontario by the morning hours, but still could have a little bit of wet, drizzly, flurry activity that could keep the roads a little slick. So I would allow a little extra time for that morning commute. There's that temperature coming up overnight, -3. And tomorrow, Kelda, a high of 5 degrees.
I like the sound of that. Thanks so much, Colette. The Ford government is bringing in a minimum wage for workers who drive for apps such as Uber and Lyft. But there's a catch that's leaving drivers less than impressed. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
In 300 meters, make a right turn on Adelaide Street West.
It's a job with almost no workplace protections. Driving for platforms like Uber or delivering for such apps as DoorDash or Skip the Dishes. For months, the Ford government signaled it had the gig economy in its sights. Today, the Premier revealed the plan.
Legislation that would make Ontario the first province in Canada to establish a minimum wage and other important rights for the digital platform workforce.
Those other rights include a guarantee that tips will be protected and more clarity on how pay is calculated.
Everything that Premier Ford and I are doing is about raising paychecks. I want people to have more take-home pay so they can build stronger families.
I took Uber to and from the announcement. Both of the drivers I rode with scoffed at the $15 an hour minimum wage. One of them said it won't help him in the slightest. The other called it garbage. Their big concern? The minimum wage would only apply to engaged hours. That's when the driver has a passenger or is making a delivery. When they're in between those times, they don't get paid at all. Jennifer Scott delivers in downtown Toronto for a number of apps.
If we're here and we're working and we're on shift and we have our bikes or our cars for our delivery bags, we should be paid from the time that we log into the app until we log out of the app.
Scott says applying the minimum wage only to engaged hours would be like only paying a cashier when they're actually ringing up sales. Uber Canada declined our request for an interview. In a statement, the company said its drivers already average more than $30 an hour during their engaged time.
There's nothing preventing any corporation from paying their workers more. In fact, I encourage it.
The changes do not give app-based workers the full protections of Ontario's Employment Standards Act.
They should be able to have benefits. They should be able to apply for EI if they're out of work. They should be able to have wages that are appropriate, minimum wage, at the very least. There are just so many things that they should have paid sick days as well.
The Ford government is aiming to get the legislation passed by early May before Queen's Park dissolves for the election campaign. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
While making that announcement today, the Premier also hinting that mask mandates could soon be dropped.
I'm listening to the Chief Medical Officer. It's his advice when they're going to come off, and we'll wait for his advice and recommendations. And once he gives the recommendations, we'll be able to move forward. What I'm hearing over the next few weeks, maybe after March break, when the kids get back, but we'll see.
As of tomorrow, people across the province will be able to gather in public indoor spaces with no capacity limits. The requirement to show proof of vaccination will also be lifted. The province reported 850 COVID-19 hospitalizations today, with just under 300 people in ICUs. 3 more COVID deaths were reported. The test positivity rate in the province currently stands at just under 9%. Just days after the province announced it would be refunding Ontarians money for license plate stickers, it seems fraudsters are trying to capitalize. Peel Police are warning people of a text message scam that includes a fake link to get a refund. Greg Ross has those details.
A new text message scam was brought to the attention of Peel Regional Police yesterday via social media.
Someone had tagged us that this had been something that was sent to them.
Constable Heather Cannon says the text message claimed to be from Service Ontario, and it directs recipients to a link where it says they can get a refund for license plate stickers. A representative for Service Ontario told CBC in a statement today that they are aware of this phishing scam and said Service Ontario will not contact you directly to provide a link to a refund. Ontarians will receive refunds for license plate stickers directly by check through the mail in late March and through April. Details about the refunds have been posted to the Service Ontario website.
It's massively organized, it's highly structured, it's systematic.
Claudiu Popa is a cybersecurity expert. He was surprised at how quickly fraudsters jumped on this announcement by the Ford government.
Typically, there's a delay when fraudsters identify a timely event that they can exploit. Sometimes it could be weeks. But this time, this type of fraud, this type of scam came out almost instantly.
Popa says by clicking on the link, you could be allowing fraudsters to gain access to your computer or mobile device.
It could simply be a phishing link where it'll ask you for personal information or for access credentials so it can steal access to your account and gain access to not just information, but potentially money.
His advice is to never click on any unsolicited links. As for Peel Regional Police, they haven't had any reports of people actually getting scammed by this, so they haven't opened an investigation. But they did want to warn people.
I guarantee just by doing that we stop someone from being scammed.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. 3 members of a GTA family made headlines when they were convicted in a disturbing horse abuse case back in 2019. Now, David, Victoria, and their son, Jason Small, are accused of taking payments for snow clearing in the GTA while providing little or no services in return. In a bizarre twist, a man claiming to be the owner of the snow clearing company denies the family runs it. But as Angelina King reports, corporate records and the company's own customers suggest otherwise.
Harry Saberi works long hours at his restaurant in Aurora. That, along with a heart issue, is why he hired someone to remove snow from his driveway. He also wanted to do something nice for his elderly neighbor. So in November, he paid $800 to have both properties cleared all winter.
I wait, but they didn't come.
He says the company he hired, Speed Sport, only cleared snow at his house once, and that's after he called several times following last month's blizzard. He says when Speed Sport did show up, they didn't complete the job. His wife's vehicle was still stuck in the garage and his neighbor's driveway wasn't cleared at all.
It's not about the money. Emotionally, I am hurt.
Saberi is just one of 3 Speed Sport customers CBC spoke with who say they received little or no service, demanded refunds, haven't got any money back, and struggled to get a hold of the company. All 3 customers say the business put this advertising sign on their property as soon as they signed the contracts. Corporation records, banking documents, an advertising account, and photos suggest David and Victoria Small and their son Jason are behind Speed Sport, which also goes by S&S Property Maintenance. They've been in the news before, when their company, Speed Sport Stables in Whitchurch, Stouffville, was investigated after more than 24 horses were neglected or found dead. In 2019, they each pleaded guilty to 1 count of permitting an animal to be in distress.
Yeah. It was him.
Saberi recognized photos of David and Jason Small as the 2 men who came to his restaurant to drop off a contract and eat lunch.
That I would question.
A man who identified himself to CBC over the phone only as Jay Latine says he runs the company, although he says he does know Victoria, David, and Jason Small.
Do they work for Speed Sport or S&S?
No, and sometimes Jason do some work for me. Yeah, he does.
And I mean, Vicky's name is accepting e-transfers, and the business has been registered under her name.
That one, I think you're wrong.
But these corporate records and e-transfers in her maiden name show it's true. 3 people who previously spoke with David Small, including his former landlord, recognized Jay Latine's voice to be David Small's. But Latine is adamant he is not David Small.
I am not wanting to drag David down any further than he is. He has been nothing but good to me.
The man I spoke with denies any customers are being left in limbo, but did say he's going to refund Harry Saberi this week. We attempted to contact Victoria and Jason Small, but didn't hear back. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's go back to Colette now. And Colette, temperatures will be rising a bit as we head into the morning.
Yeah, we are going to be finding those temperatures coming up in the overnight. And, you know, that's kind of a flip-flop of what we would normally see. But they will keep rising during the day, so that we'll get into those mid-single digits into the afternoon hours as our winds kind of keep changing direction. Light snow overnight into tomorrow morning, and then some flurries or kind of wet little bit of drizzle after that possible. But those temperatures, yes, they do go up for us here for midweek, but then they're going to come down again as we start heading towards the end of the week. And then they'll they'll do what they do and come up again. But that's really been the story, system after system going through, and that really has an impact on seeing that fluctuation in those temperatures. So there's the light snow coming through. In many cases, closer to the lakeshore, it's more like some flurries, but getting a few centimeters, showing you that in detail in just a moment. Slightly heavier as we get a bit further east, so you can kind of double the amounts that we'll be getting through that area, and it lingers a little longer. And then we get into Wednesday, and you know, the early part of the day Wednesday will be quieter. However, here comes the next system, and that one, when it comes through, again, another maybe 1 to 3 centimeters with it, just dealing with what we have in hand overnight tonight. You can see probably just a trace here towards the city. Oshawa, a couple centimeters, more significant into Barrie. And Kingston, yes, 3, but then as you get a little later in the day, probably seeing that push towards 5 centimeters there. Windsor tonight, that temperature kind of nearly steady, around freezing, and then tomorrow that spike as the temperatures go up. So 8 degrees for the daytime high, and probably not seeing much of the precipitation at all, but some of the extra cloud cover certainly. There are those temperatures through the overnight hours, but they will keep coming up, taking us into those single digits, perhaps even some 6s showing up for the daytime highs for tomorrow. But Toronto, it's 5. There's the next system into Wednesday. You see that kind of temperature is closer to seasonal. We should be daytime high of about 2 degrees. So we're close on Wednesday, and then things drop. So Thursday, this is what happens during the day, but overnight, as we get towards Friday morning, we're going to see that minus 11 with the winds. We could get back into some extreme cold weather alerts. So be watching that carefully as well, Kelda.
All right. Thanks so much, Colette. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.